I am proposing that Amazonia contain a hidden civilization. One that may well predate our own!
I suggest that Amazonia could hold a secret civilization, one that even existed before ours. Before he disappeared into the unmapped expanse of the Amazon, Percy Fawcett unveiled something that would surprise the world. The story of the City of Z revolves around this extraordinary individual, Percy Harrison Fawcett, an adventurer who in many respects was a flesh-and-blood Indiana Jones. Decades of speculation by explorers, historians, and enthusiasts have filled the air with theories about the legendary lost City of Z, a site that supposedly holds secrets beyond dreams. But what Fawcett discovered, or thought he discovered, was even more extraordinary than anyone could imagine. How did Fawcett, working in a pre-technology world with no satellite photos, no satellite pictures, no dependable maps to guide him, acquire such knowledge? What drove him to risk everything to chase a mystery that has been beyond some of the greatest minds for over a century? The records and notes he left behind hint at the possibility of ancient civilizations, hidden treasures, and lost truths that have the potential to radically change how we see human history. Fawcett's ultimate disclosures remain a challenge to all we believed we were learning about exploration, bravery, and the allure of the unknown. Percy Harrison Fawcett was born in 1867 in Torquay, England. As a child, he was fascinated by geography, travel, and discovery. He was well schooled at Newton Abbot Proprietary College in science and observation, abilities that would later serve him on his expeditions. He entered the British Army in 1886 and became an artillery officer. His army service took him around the world, to India, Ceylon, and South Africa, where he acquired not only discipline and toughness but also exposure to varied landscapes and cultures. These widened his horizons and kindled his desire to explore. Fawcett changed his interest from military life to exploration, mapping, and archaeology by the early 1900s. Soon, he became a member of the Royal Geographical Society, which was impressed by his remarkable talents and sent him on mapping expeditions to South America. His work consisted mainly of demarcating the boundaries of British Guiana and Brazil, hazardous, challenging work that needed accuracy, stamina, and sensitivity towards the indigenous population. It was during these expeditions that Fawcett gained his enduring interest in the Amazon rainforest and its native inhabitants. His work was revolutionary. Fawcett carefully mapped areas never before charted and documented the languages, customs, and way of life of indigenous tribes. His maps and reports gained him universal admiration in the world of science. But all this changed in 1920 when he came across a document that would change his life forever, Manuscript 512. This amazing manuscript, stored in Brazil's National Library, had written of a discovery of an ancient ruined city deep in the jungle. It had spoken of towering arches, statues carved from stone, and mysterious hieroglyphs etched into massive edifices. To Fawcett, this was no fantasy but proof of a lost civilization. His imagination fired, he started believing that there had been an advanced city once in the Amazon, buried under centuries of growth and decay. Though most scholars jeered at the idea, deriding the Amazon as too dangerous to harbor any substantial civilization, Fawcett was not dissuaded by their doubt. He relied on the oral histories he found among the native people and on his own hunches. He was convinced that stories of stone ruins, vanished settlements, and unexplained earthworks told by local people were not fictions but shreds of memory handed down through generations. In 1920, Fawcett set out on his initial expedition to find the lost city using Manuscript 512 clues. He took a small, hand-picked team into the hostile jungles of Brazil's Mato Grosso region. The journey was harsh: dense forests, poisonous insects, hostile country, tropical illnesses, and persistent shortages of equipment were challenges to their stamina. Still, Fawcett doggedly continued with unshakable resolve. Although the expedition was unable to locate the lost city, they gathered precious evidence. Fawcett mapped river systems, vegetation and wildlife, and strange stone configurations that suggested the presence of human habitation. They also discovered shards of pottery and faint remains of ancient villages. All this increased his belief that a complex civilization once existed in the Amazon. Back in England in 1921, Fawcett developed his ideas further, gave lectures at scientific meetings, and wrote pieces of work that enthralled the public. He grew famous, and his name became renowned within exploration communities. For Fawcett, not having instantaneous success was not a failure, it was an indication that Z was well hidden, and would be discovered at some stage. By 1924, Fawcett was gearing up once more for what he hoped would be the crowning glory of his career. This time, however, he had companions. He took his eldest son, Jack, and Jack's friend, Raleigh Rimmel, and set it in his mind that they would find together the great city of Z. In April 1925, the three set out with little equipment, traveling light and depending on their stamina and competence. Fawcett led the party with dogged determination. His last letter to his wife exuded confidence. "You need have no fear of failure," he wrote. But then, as if consumed by the jungle itself, the expedition disappeared. Neither Fawcett, his son, nor Rimmel was ever heard of again. Despite the massive search attempts over the following years, no conclusive evidence of them has ever been discovered. Their disappearance was one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in the history of exploration. The mystery of Fawcett and the city of Z intrigued the world. Throughout the years that followed his vanishing, numerous expeditions were undertaken to find either the explorers or the mythical city. Some hypothesized that Fawcett had actually discovered Z and decided to stay hidden with its inhabitants, while others thought that he died in the wild without achieving anything. Contemporary archaeology has reinvigorated interest in Fawcett's hypotheses. In 2022, scientists using LiDAR, light detection and ranging, technology detected more than 200 giant geometric earthworks in the upper Amazon basin, along the Brazil-Bolivia border. These earthworks, circles, squares, and complex shapes, are a sure indication of the existence of a coordinated pre-Columbian society with sophisticated engineering and societal organization. Such a discovery resonates with Fawcett's assertion that the rainforest was once home to complex societies long derided by conventional scholars. But there are still questions. What, if anything, did Fawcett learn prior to his disappearance? Did he really stand at the doors of the lost city of Z? For Percy Fawcett, the quest for Z was never about adventure. It was a quest to rewrite history and establish that South America's indigenous civilizations were as advanced as Europe, Asia, or the Middle East. His expeditions were precise, merging cartography, anthropology, and archaeology. Contrary to most explorers who went seeking treasure, fame, or conquest, Fawcett was looking for understanding. Despite the hardships of his journeys, torrential rains, fevers, hordes of insects, and constant risk, he documented every detail. His journals contained river routes, descriptions of strange structures, and native reports of lost ruins. They later motivated researchers to peer beyond assumptions and regard the Amazon as a nursery of complex societies. Percy Fawcett never discovered Z, but his research cast the seed of possibility. His careful documentation and steadfast conviction encouraged explorers, archaeologists, and writers over generations. Whether Z is as he envisioned it or not, the persistence of the lost city remains to defy our knowledge of human history. Was it possible that a civilization as sophisticated as the Old World civilizations could have actually flourished in the Amazon? Percy Fawcett thought so, and to this day his legend encourages us to continue looking. The question that nagged Percy Fawcett, and that still intrigues us today, was deceptively simple: might a civilization as advanced as those in Europe, Asia, or the Middle East have actually flourished in the heart of the Amazon jungle? Fawcett knew that it had, and he was intent on being the one to convince the world. His fixation was not only fueled by manuscript 512 but also by the accounts of the indigenous people he met. They told of mysterious stoneworks, abandoned villages, and ancient ruins hidden by rivers and deep foliage of jungle. To Fawcett, these were not legends or myths. They were shards of truth, cultural memories distilled through centuries of word of mouth. Every tale contributed to his belief that the city of Z lost was not fiction, but reality. He also looked to geography for proof. Fawcett examined the complex network of rivers, the topography of the land, and the ecological patterns that could once have sustained thriving populations. He speculated that ancient Amazonians had ingeniously adapted to their surroundings, having devised systems of agriculture, water control, and settlement that enabled them to survive where foreigners perceived only hostility. In his opinion, these civilizations might have rivaled, and in certain respects, even exceeded, the great cities of Europe. As news of Fawcett's theories circulated, newspapers in Britain and elsewhere latched onto the story. The vision of a lost city, shining with secrets, poised to be unearthed in the jungles, caught the public eye. Fawcett found himself both praised and mocked. Some praised him as visionary, others denigrated him as a dreamer pursuing fantasies. But Percy Fawcett was not so easily deterred. His interest in Z was not strictly scientific interest. To him, establishing the existence of the city was to rewrite history. It was to convince the world that South America possessed civilizations as rich and complicated as on any other continent. It was this vision, more than gold or fame, that led him back into the jungle again and again. Before he went out on his expeditions, Fawcett had established himself as a man of discipline and remarkable preparation. Unlike most explorers who charged headfirst into the jungle in hopes of making discoveries or seeking riches, Fawcett did nothing on impulse. He pored over maps compulsively, consulted with tribes, and practiced survival skills. His familiarity with cartography, anthropology, and natural science provided him with a special advantage. He entered the jungle not as foe to be overcome but as riddle to be solved. Nevertheless, the Amazon was cruel. On his initial expedition in 1920, he spent weeks immersed in deluges of rain, clouds of biting insects, and constant risk of fever and disease. Supplies ran low, and the rivers burst into raging torrents. But still, Fawcett kept precise records. He recorded plants and fauna, mapped the rivers, and noted unusual stone formations and pottery shards. He even noted suggestions of deserted camps, relics that appeared too methodical to be accidental. These hints assuaged him that he was on the right track. Although he didn't discover the city, he was more convinced than ever when he went back to England. For Fawcett, not discovering anything was not an indication of failure but of the city's secrecy. Fawcett's return only made the public more interested. He lectured, he wrote articles, and he publicized his evidence. The scientists were still skeptical, but the people were captivated. The concept of a vanished city deep in the jungle, a society that challenged the preconceptions of the time, was irresistible. Fawcett, with his measured certainty and systematic approach, was the very archetype of the explorer hero. His demand for careful documentation and his use of empirical observation set him apart. He wasn't searching for treasure or legend. He was constructing a case.